Welcome back, friends, to another New World video. Today, we're going to be talking about Season 5 in New World, the season of the Guardian. It's been out for about a week now. I wanted to talk about what's good in the season, what's bad, and just give my sort of overall review on it and the current state of the game. Now, I know occasionally these videos break out and go past the normal New World community and my own viewership into, you know, the sort of wider internet. So I wanted to explain briefly what seasons are for those of you who aren't well versed in the current state of New World. Amazon announced these over a year ago. The first season that we got was Season 1, Fellowship and Fire. And sometimes I do think they're just like an excuse to sell a battle pass every season, which typically happens every 3 months. Contains a battle pass. You can get the free version and the paid version for $20. You might be thinking that a season, you know, when you think about Diablo, is a character reset, a chance to make a new character. And whilst you can do that, there's no obligation. It's, you know, nothing gets wiped. It is basically just a relatively big update. And like I say, a season pass comes along with it. Now, Season 1 sort of set up the expectations for seasons. We got a new dungeon called Empyrean Forge. They also introduced the seasonal storyline where we get Grace O'Malley and Xander and Cat or a dog. You know, there's like a temporary storyline that you can do that changes every season. And then alongside that, you typically get a quality of life or some sort of big update for it as well. So in Season 1, like I said, we get the new dungeon, the storyline, and then they also introduced these gear sets as well. So gear sets are actually a really nice mechanic in the game. It's hard to imagine them not being in the game at this point, and you can effectively just make a loadout. So you can use it for something like logging, you can use it to make a tank build or a PvP build. You just drag in the sort of weapons and armor that you want into there, and then when you hit the button, it changes over to the loadout and you're just ready to go. It doesn't change your weapon mastery and your attributes, but nonetheless, it was a pretty awesome feature. Now, 3 months after we got Season 1, we got Season 2, Blood of the Sands, and this honestly was like just absolutely what I want seasons to be. There was so much content that was brought in with this. We got the Season Pass, of course. They also introduced Transmog halfway through the season, which is great. We got the Sandworm raid. We got this hatchery sort of mini raid for 10 and 20 players. They also introduced a new Heart Rune. We got updates to the PvP rewards track. We got cross-server Outpost Rush raid group, so you can group up with up to 20 people. They also brought in a new 3v3 arena map, and in general, just like a lot of content. It was a pretty solid update, and honestly, I think one of the best seasons so far. After that, things kind of go downhill a little bit. We got Season 3, which really didn't have much content at all, but it coincided with the Rise of the Angry Earth expansion, and that was kind of where all the focus was. And then Season 4 and Season 5, in my opinion, have just been pretty disappointing. We're not going to talk too much about Season 4 because, like I say, this is a review of Season 5, but in general, I think lack of content is a good way to describe it. The main selling points of Season 5 is that it introduces the Winter Runeforge, which is like a 10-person mini raid boss kind of fight. We have mounts in Outpost Rush. They fully finished up the main storyline all the way up to level 60, 8 new artifacts, and you can play the game with a controller. Now, of these new features, I do think some of them are pretty well designed. I think the Winter Runeforge, although it is kind of just the single-player trial story boss from Season 4, they've scaled it up to 10 people. It's not too difficult, but it's not too easy at the same time. The rewards are decent, and we'll get onto that a little bit later on. And you can do it with your company, but you can also just do it with a pug. I think, you know, it is like pretty nice sort of mid-tier content. Not too challenging. So it's not locked out like with the Sandworm, where you have to have an elite raid group, but it's also not too easy at the same time. So like I say, Winter Runeforge gets a thumbs up from me. Mounts in Outpost Rush, I do think are actually like a pretty positive addition as well. So if you go into Outpost Rush now, you can now get on a mount and move around the map quite a lot faster. So the action, rotating to Baroness, everything sort of plays out quite a bit quicker. However, I will point out that, you know, my opinion on mounts being good in Outpost Rush isn't sort of a universally agreed upon. I have seen some people, like we've got the Saint Paladin here saying mounts absolutely ruined Outpost Rush, and that, again, that does seem to be of a mixed bag there, but generally I would say mounts in Outpost Rush actually a bit of a thumbs up as well. The quality of life in Season 5 isn't quite as big as gear sets or transmog or raid groups, but instead we do have some sort of changes to our attributes. So you can now choose where you want to magnify your stats, which is pretty nice, especially if you're using a set with lots of magnify. So let's just go ahead and pop one of those on real quick. I think tank has a lot of magnify. you go here, and then you can choose from this drop-down menu what you want to magnify. So previously it was highest, and this sort of created an awkward spot where when you were trying to put points into stats, magnify would be like, oh, you want to magnify that? And I'm like, no, I didn't want to put that many points in it. And then you go to constitution, and then it magnifies it, and it's just really awkward to sort of sort out your stats. And if you haven't seen magnify, it was introduced with the expansion as a way to have like one piece of gear that could be kind of anything you want. So this magnify is currently for strength right now, but then if we wanted to play a dexterity build, we could put points into dexterity, and then magnify would choose dexterity when you put a lot of points into it. But like I say, if you were trying to play like 200 dex, 100 intelligence, and you had multiple magnify pieces, it's really awkward to navigate. But now you can just say like, listen, always magnify strength. All right, bud, just always magnify the strength. And then when you go in here, let's just redo one more time. You're not going to have this problem where we start putting points into constitution, and then constitution becomes your highest, and it magnifies con, and then you just have this sort of awkward back and forth where it's like this, and then you go here, and you can see the, like, we go here, and then we go here, and then we go here, and then we go, it's just really awkward to try and juggle. So yeah, the option to just choose what is magnified, albeit it's not the biggest change, is quite nice. And then one other thing that you have a feature of as well is respec is only 50 gold instead of 200 gold. So you can respec 4 times now before you would hit the equivalent price of what you used to in the past. And that just generally takes one of the good features of the game, which is just being able to play any spec and make it a little bit more free. It's still not entirely free. I know a lot of people would like to see it be done with Azoth, but either way, I am appreciating that change. It is saving me like thousands of gold a week, maybe even tens of thousands. I don't know. I do like to respec pretty often from playing tank, healer, and DPS. So yeah, good quality of life with the magnify and respec changes, albeit it's not as big as transmog or gear sets. Still a pretty nice feature. And then finally, there is the main storyline. You can go all the way up to level 60 now and do the Shattered Mountain quest line with Isabella and stuff. I haven't done it yet, but I'm gonna say that it's probably pretty good. I'm gonna experience it at some point, but so far all of the main story revamps that I've been doing throughout the year have been pretty solid, and it has drastically improved the leveling experience. So I also am gonna give a thumbs up for the main story rework, even though I haven't done it. Like I say, it's probably pretty good. Now, with the positives covered, we do now need to sadly talk about the negatives for Season 5, and there are quite a few, unfortunately. The first one, in my opinion, is the upgraded combat and animation system deep dive. Now, it's unfortunate that we have to say the upgraded system is detrimental to the game. There are some positives about it. I do believe that if you're in a big group scenario, so if you're doing a large chest run, or in your war, or even outpost rush, I do think frame rate and overall performance in the game is actually quite a lot better. It's noticeably better. However, the combat itself, especially in PvP, feels really bad. I've been doing some 3v3 arenas lately, and holy flip, there's like a lot of lag, the ability delay. It just, the game doesn't feel smooth anymore. When you want to sort of dodge roll and then weapon swap and then use an ability, the game kind of like loses half of that input. So you try and dodge roll and then weapon swap and it doesn't weapon swap, or you try and use the ability after you've weapon swapped and it just doesn't happen. I think with bow players, they're having a problem where they fire a projectile, but the game thinks that they're like 2 feet to the right of where they used to be, so the arrow comes out all wonky. Sadly, the upgraded combat is kind of feeling like a bit of a downgrade right now. Like I say, this I do think has more of an impact on PvP, and it doesn't seem to be that everybody has a universal agreement on this. Some people say that it feels just as good, some people say it feels better, but I think a lot of people are saying it feels worse, and I do believe a lot of that is the PvP community for the game. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily an avid PvPer in New World, but I do believe objectively, after playing quite a few games of Outpost Rush and 3v3 Arena now, that it does generally feel a little bit jankier. Now, fingers crossed, Amazon can fix this. They have been doing a lot of patches lately, and the whole idea with the upgraded code is that they can go in and change things much faster. So hopefully this isn't going to be a long-term impact on the game, but I would say the initial reception to the updated combat animation system is a bit of a negative. Now, the next negative that I want to talk about in Season 5, I wasn't sure if we should put in this video because I honestly don't think it's that big of a deal breaker, but the Season Pass no longer contains transmog tokens. Every other Season Pass so far has had at least a couple of transmog tokens available on the free track and the paid track, but now there are none in there. Transmog tokens are currently going at 1 for $2.50 basically. You can get 10 for $20. And yeah, usually there was a few sort of scattered throughout the Season Pass, but there's none this time around. And I'm not really sure why. I feel like it maybe lessens the value of the Season Pass, but they still, to my knowledge, are selling it at the same price. So this feels like a little bit of a cheeky one from Amazon. Again, I don't really care too much, but I would it's enough for me to put it into the negatives for the season. The third negative for Season 5 is probably one of the biggest ones, and it is bugs. Now, I know bugs and New World have kind of been synonymous and they go together, but the big sort of kicker for Season 5 and bugs is that this season was delayed by 3 weeks, almost a month of delays until it came out. And when it first launched, and even to this day, there's still some pretty bad glaring bugs. Between the first day, where we had sort of just perks were generally just like code all across the screen, to people floating in the air. I've seen this in Outpost Rush, I've seen this outside of Windsward. We have rapid fire bows, although I think that one has been fixed. The Artifact Void Gauntlet has a really nasty bug where it's doing true damage effectively, so you literally can't block it. There's no mitigation, so it's doing an absurd amount of damage. We have a widespread bug where you can't craft certain things in the crafting table. I mean, it's just quite frankly a little bit of a mess, and I would have thought with 2024, you know, New World came out in 2021, we're 3 years in now, not quite, because it was the end of 2021, but either way, it's sort of the expectations for Season 4, and maybe foolishly, Season 5 rather, the expectation was that it was going to be, you know, refined. We've got the delay, we're in 2024 now, we're going to get a nice, smooth New World patch, and yeah, a delay, and then hit with a lot of bugs. It just feels like we're right back at square one, and honestly, it's got to be said, I'm just a little bit disappointed. Maybe not surprised, but yeah, it's just, come on, please, Amazon, why is this still happening? I really can't say anything other than just like the bugs are, I know it's nothing to be surprised about, but it really is disappointing that these things are still making it through. I don't know what's happening with QA. I don't know what the situation is. It would be great to hear Amazon comment on this, but some of these bugs are really glaringly obvious, and you would just immediately see them, I feel like, if it went through QA. So I really don't know how some of this stuff is making it through, but it is definitely a negative experience logging into the game on a new update to see this stuff. Another negative for Season 5 actually relates to the Winter Runeforge. Now, I briefly hinted at this when we talked about it being a positive, but there is a negative with this as well, in that Amazon have capped the rewards on this to just 2 a week. So the first 2 times that you kill the final boss in a week, you'll get a bonus chest. It can contain the new Artifact Great Axe. But after that, the rewards are so crappy that it's basically not worth doing. And I feel like Amazon have a tendency to do this. They usually put a lockout on the number of attempts that you can do content. Now, I know this is commonplace with a lot of the other MMOs, like there are raid lockouts, but I just think considering the general lack of content in New World, 2 is very restrictive in my opinion. They brought in a similar 10-person boss battle back with Season 2. It was called the Hatchery. And with the Hatchery, you can do 7 bonus runs. So I just think that's a very hefty slash in reduction. And maybe they really should consider going back up to 7 for this one, because 2 really is quite pitiful. And it leads to a problem where a lot of people get their runs in early on in the week, and then as you leave it towards the weekend, it makes it harder and harder for players to find a group for it, because a lot of people have got their 2 bonus runs, and then they're just not incentivized to go back in there because the rewards are so crap if you don't have the 2 bonus runs. So yeah, I think that's actually quite a big negative there for the Winter Runeforge. Yeah, Amazon's just being way too conservative with the lockout there. Now, there are going to be 2 events happening in Season 5. The first one is the Springtide Bloom. This is somewhat similar to the Winter Convergence or the Summer Medley Fair. You've got these villages dotted around the map. You can go in to trade in tokens. Tokens you earn from blowing up wasps and picking flowers. And then there's a bunch of skins and craftables you can get. And we have the Rabbit's Revenge. Now, this is more of a sort of half event, because you basically just kill rabbits until they give you the drop you want, and that's it. So there's not really a whole lot of involvement in this event. And like I say, so we have 1.5 events over the next 3 months, and I think that is a bit of a negative for Season 5 as well. Combined with the general lack of content, the delay to the beginning of Season 5, the overall amount of bugs, and the restrictions that they put on the few pieces of content that they have added in, I am going to be giving Season 5 probably a 5 out of 10. I think it is a pretty meh or a mid season to be added to the game, and this is one of the big problems that we have right now. Season 4 I think was a pretty sort of season as well, going into Season 5, which is also pretty We have a lot of good games coming out right now, which are maybe going to be siphoning some players away because, you know, there's just more to do. And another big problem we have is we don't really know what Season 6 and beyond look like for New World as well. Going into Season 4 and in previous seasons, we had a roadmap, we had a general idea of where the game is going, but Amazon at this point is saying we have to wait until June to find out what the future of New World looks like. So yeah, you can maybe understand a few players might be checking out. Overall, I do think there is quite a good amount of content to do for a new player, and if you're very casual, Season 5 is going to be pretty good. You know, you go in, you get your 2 Winter Rune Forges, you do like an occasional Outpost Rush. You know, if you're playing New World for like less than 5 hours a week, I think Season 5 is probably going to be pretty decent. But for anybody who is, you know, an MMO player, somebody who sinks in multiple hours a day, quite frankly, I just think the update isn't good enough. Now, if I was in Amazon's position and calling the shots, personally, I would bump up the Winter Runeforge to 7 runs. I really don't think there's too much of a restriction. You know, you're worried about people burning through the content too fast, but I think we also need to be worried about people just not having content to do in general as well. So I think like 7 attempts at the Winter Runeforge honestly would be just fine. I think the loot is really that insane that it's going to break the game. I would also, personally, if I had the power, to update the loot table in the hatchery as well. I think we do have a decent amount of content in here with the Sandworm and the hatchery. I think both of those could do with updated loot tables, and that would give quite a lot more PvE content to do. From a PvP standpoint, I know that it seems unlikely that 3v3 cross-server is going to be implemented, but I think in the very short term, they could also look at updating the XP and the Azoth Salt from this as well. In Season 3, or maybe it was Season 4, I can't remember now, they nerfed the amount of XP and Azoth Salt that you got from 3v3 Arena while simultaneously buffing Outpost Rush. But then Outpost Rush is already cross-server, and you already get Dark Matter, and you get faction tokens and faction rep, and there's relic artifacts that come from Outpost Rush boxes. I think there's just every reason to play Outpost Rush right now, and almost no reason to play 3v3 Arena. So maybe give 3v3 Arena just a little bit of love. If not cross-server queuing, at least just consider bumping up the amount of XP and the amount of Azoth Salt that you get from winning or losing. Also, another event would probably go down reasonably well for Season 5. I think even just taking, you know, one of the previous mini events, like the Raffle Bones event or something like that, that was pretty fun as a way to get a few items, although it would mean that they'd have to update the loot table for Raffle Bones, so I don't know how well that would go. But either way, I think another event being somewhere in Season 5 would probably help for player retention just a little bit as well. And I've wished it was a thing for a long time, but Season Pass aptitude would also probably go a long way to helping with player retention as well, just giving us something to do while we're waiting for this announcement. Once you get to level 100 in the Season Pass, it stops there, but I think if there was a way to sort of get, you know, a few extra bonus levels, maybe it would cap out at 3 per day or something like that, but to have, you know, to give you a reason to keep doing the activity cards after you get to 100, even if it was just for a little bit of gold or dark matter, or you could cash up a certain amount to then redeem a chromatic seal or something like that. I think that would also be great for player retention as well. But anyway, that is my review of Season 5, my opinions on it, and my suggestions to Amazon Game Studios. Let me know what you guys think. Am I completely doolally? Do I have the wrong idea with Season 5? Is it a fantastic update? Is it much worse than I say it is? What do you guys think as a PvE, as a PvP player, as a new player, or even just somebody who's casually passing by and has somehow made it to the end of a New World seasonal review video? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, if you enjoy this sort of content, make sure you leave a like and subscribe so you can see more videos as they come out. We're going to have a few more updates for Season 5 talking about the new artifacts and the best perks to put on them, as well as some good, exciting new builds for Season 5. I think the Nature's Wrath, Phoenix, Sin, and even Venom do create some pretty spicy new builds. So if you want to see those, make sure you subscribe, as I say, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.